In Russia, tensions are growing among Orthodox Christians, Muslims, and Jews. Now, this divide is being fueled in part by who the Kremlin is supporting, as well as policies, as well as influential figures in the Russian media, many of whom are Jewish. One prominent example is Vladimir Solovoyev, who is a top Russian TV pundit. He is also Jewish, and he has also expressed his willingness to defend Israel. However, the Kremlin's foreign policy stance has been at odds with this sentiment of supporting Israel. Seeking to distance itself from the U.S., Russia has extended support to groups and nations such as Hamas and Iran, which are clearly adversarial to Israel and the U.S. Consequently, Russian public figures have aligned with the Kremlin and their policies on Hamas and have criticized the media, pointing out Jewish representation as being a problem. They specifically target shows like Solovoyev Live for having employed, quote, too many Jews. Solovoyev has countered by accusing these figures in the government of promoting Jewish ethnic cleansing, which I find ironic because he himself has called for the ethnic cleansing of Ukraine. Currently, in Russia, there's roughly 85,000 Jews, 14 million Muslims, and 58 million Russian Orthodox Christians. Most Orthodox Christians and Muslims have somewhat of a disdain for Jews and are unwilling to grant Jews basic religious liberties, despite Judaism's legal status of a traditional religion. For instance, less than half of all Russians, or 47%, would allow Jews to build synagogues in their hometowns. Even fewer Russians would permit Jewish religious publishings. The establishment of Jewish religious schools receives very little support as well, with only 38%, and only 27% would allow Jews to publicly preach Judaism. While there's considerable support for Russian teaching elective courses on Russian Orthodoxy in state-run schools, only 13% of Russians would allow teaching Judaism in those same schools. 44% do not want Jews even doing charitable work in their towns, and 24% of Russians have said that they would deny Jews access to civil liberties. Now, these tensions are evident as Russia's international dealings seem to be putting pressure on the Jewish community. While leaders from the US, UK, Germany, and France all visit Israel and show support, Russia welcomed a delegation from Hamas. The Kremlin's stance was further highlighted when Russia and China vetoed US-led UN Security Council resolutions condemning Hamas's attacks and supporting Israel's right to self-defense. China, who has a general disdain of Muslims as evidenced by their treatment of the Uyghurs, is supporting Hamas merely to counter US global influence. However, such moves by the Kremlin are causing unease among Jewish communities in Russia. The concerns of Jews and frankly Muslims are intensified by the Kremlin's close ties with the Russian Orthodox Church, which is sometimes perceived as anti-Muslim and definitely perceived as anti-Semitic. To top it off, do you remember when the Orthodox Church basically deified Putin on prayer cards? The top of this says, the almighty Vladimir Putin, and it can be hearkened to the fact that many in Russia believe Putin to be the king of the Russian Orthodox Empire. Adding another layer of complexity to the religious and political landscape is Ramzan Kadyrov, who is the head of the Chechen Republic, a majority Muslim population. Now, Kadyrov is very loyal to Putin, and Putin is seen as a champion of Orthodox Christianity. This puts him somewhat at odds with Kadyrov's role as a representative of Chechnya's Muslim population. Now, these tensions came to the fore when a video emerged showing Kadyrov's son assaulting someone for allegedly disrespecting the Quran. This ignited widespread criticism of the assault in Russia because many in the Orthodox community supported the desecration of the Quran. So, just to sum everything up, we have disdain for Jews coming from the Duma in Russia. The Jewish-led media apparatus is pushing back. Orthodox Christians are angry at Chechen Muslims while maintaining a historical disdain for Jews, all while Russia supports a terrorist organization in Hamas and Putin uses the Orthodox Church to advance his political goals. So obviously Vladimir Putin wants to get ahead and tamp down some of the fires being started by these religious disagreements. So he held a meeting with various religious leaders. But then it created the optics of being at odds with them or leading them or just being separate from them by putting them at the opposite end of one of his big tables from where he's sitting. As you can see, he's just sitting here all by his lonesome, addressing all of the religious leaders from the various sects within Russia.